All right, so in this video, I want to go through some different bugging out scenarios and what are your options. It's kind of impossible to figure out every single person's situation because all of our situations are different because of geographics, because of financial situations, because of family makeup. All of that stuff needs to our plans need to be tailored to our specific situation and where our family lives and everything. But I do want to go through a few different scenarios and some of the basics to think about that will give you some kind of ideas to run through as you're thinking about this stuff, as you're trying to figure out your bug out plan. And I've got a video where I'll show you the plan that I kind of use, the basics of the plan that I use, and maybe help you formulate your own. So some of the basic bug out tactics and some of the things that you're going to have to think about are getting your family together. This is probably one of the most important parts because all of our families are separated, or most of us anyway. You know, I've got kids that live 50 miles away. I've got one that lives 20 miles away. I've got family that lives, halfway across the state. So we've got to get a plan together where everybody can kind of meet up and find that one spot where everybody can meet up, and then you guys can go to the bug out location. But getting your family together is crucial. And then your timing is going to be everything, because if you live in, depending on where you live, if you live in an urban area, you could need to, react in a split second. You might need to see everything that's going on and kind of look into the future and go, okay, this is getting bad. I need to get out of here. Or you could live in the suburbs and you could be thinking, okay, the stuff is, think of it like a fire. This stuff is going on in the city, and it looks like it's coming towards me. So how much time do I have to get this stuff done? So timing is everything, and timing is crucial. We want to try to get out before this mass exodus of people, or we want to try to skirt all of that while these people are getting out. So thinking about that is crucial. And then in your bug out plan, you always have to have contingency plans. Plan on getting separated. If you've got a couple different vehicles, say you and your wife or husband are taking separate vehicles to bring more supplies with you, always plan on getting separated and have these rally points set up along the way where you guys can meet back up, and even have, good communications like walkie-talkies or even ham radio, stuff like that, because cell phones aren't going to be working for most likely they're not going to be working. So you're not going to be able to text somebody, hey, I'm at the corner of so-and-so. Why don't you come meet me here? So that stuff isn't going to work. What you're going to have to do is figure out how you're going to communicate with each other in those situations. And then, like I said earlier, avoid the refugee routes. These are the main highways. People are creatures of habit, so they're going to be traveling these main arteries, these main roads that they're used to traveling on a daily basis. So know some of these different roads, these offshoots, these different routes that you can take, and practice these routes. As you're driving to work, don't just drive the highway to work during the day. Maybe take a different offshoot and see how that affects getting you to work. Maybe leave a little bit earlier so you're not late to work or anything, but try these different routes. And you've seen stuff like this in a snowstorm, these people getting on the highway and it just getting jam-packed. This is kind of what it's going to be like in a situation like that, because all it takes is one person to screw everything up, and then for miles behind that one person, that accident, that whatever's happening, everything's messed up. And once you're on the highway, you're kind of locked in there. There's only a few different exit routes. So if you take these smaller roads, you'll have you'll have more options, basically. And then your outside communications. And this kind of goes into timing. Your outside communications, knowing what's going on in your area. And this is where police scanners are great, or the hand crank radios. If there's any sort of grid left where people are, the news is still on, maybe it's before you kind of have this feeling that everything is getting ready to just explode. And so you want to be in touch with what's going on in your area. And even as you're traveling, police scanners are great because they can kind of tell you what's going on and where to avoid and which routes to take and all that. So pay attention to your outside communications too. Find ways to get that information, and think about all the different scenarios. How will you get that information if the grid's down? How will you get that information if only part of the grid's down? Having landline cell phones is a great idea, because if the cell phone towers go out, or landline phones, not cell phones, if the cell towers go out, the cell phones are going to be useless. But the people that still have, and they're far and few between, still have landlines, will be able to communicate with their family that's 50, 100 miles away or anything like that. So think about that stuff. And then your family communications, as you're traveling to this bug out location, how are you all going to communicate? And I kind of covered that with the, ham radio or walkie-talkies, anything like that. CB radio is a good one too, because that has a little bit further range. To use walkie-talkies, you're going to have to basically be car in front of car for something like that, but still a good idea. You could tell the person in front, hey, we're going to be taking off here. We're going to be turning off here. Or I just heard from this person, this is what we're going to do. So communicating and making sure everybody is on the same page. And this goes before you even bug out in the first place too. Even people that aren't on board with what you're doing, letting them know and saying, hey, just pacify me, will you? Just if anything happens, meet me right here. And then we need to understand what people are going to be, what they're going to be doing, understanding that mob mentality. People tend to lose every single one of their brain cells when something like this happens. They begin to panic, they begin to freak out, and we don't want to be one of these people. We need to have a level head if we're going to make it from where we are to where we want to be. And freaking out isn't going to do us any good. It's going to only make the problems worse. So we need to try to understand how these people are reacting. What we need to understand how these mobs, this mob mentality and riots and all of this. And we need to try to stay away from those hotspots. And we'll go into that in a video here shortly. And then always expect the unexpected and be the gray man. Yeah, and being the gray man means don't go out looking like you are, driving your nice SUV and that, your family's all together and you're going on a picnic or something. You're going to become a target at that point. So try to be the gray man. Now, if all you have is that nice SUV, then that's what you have. But, don't go sell your SUV and buy a beat up old Ford pickup truck. You want a reliable truck as well. So, but be that gray man. Don't look like you are somebody that they need, that if somebody's just dying of thirst and they need water, and if you look like a good target, they're going to come get you. So be that gray man. Avoid those refugee routes. Avoid those main highways. Get out of there as quietly as possible. And the timing goes into this as well. Get out of there before they start freaking out. So, and what we'll do now is we'll go into this video about the 3-layered approach that I use and how to kind of formulate a bug out plan and get everybody together and take all of these things and put them into a plan and try to get that plan in place before anything happens. So let's get into that video, and then we'll go over some different scenarios. Okay, so let's go over how I kind of diagram my map and how I kind of figure out my different situations. These will be different for everybody because this is just what works for me. So figure out a plan that works for you and what you think is going to help you get your family safely from point A to point B. And what I like to do is diagnose different hotspots that I think are going to be places that I want to avoid. Maybe this right here could be a hotspot. And kind of think of this as kind of a bullseye, so to speak, or a target. In the epicenter right here, that's where most of the stuff is going to be happening. And then as you spread out, that still could be a dangerous area right there. So you kind of want to avoid that area and skirt that area if you can. Or let's say that, down here we've got another hot spot that we want to try to avoid. We think this is a Walmart or something, and this is going to be an area we want to stay away from. And then we'll go ahead and throw one more in here, and we'll put one, I don't know, this neighborhood right here. Maybe this is a bad neighborhood or something, and we want to just stay out of that. So these are the hot spots that you think might cause you problems. And if you're trying to get to, your bug out location over here, let's say we're going to go about right here. That's where our bug out location is going to be. We've got to try to get, and let's say that our house is right here. We've got to try to get from our house right here to our bug out location and avoid these areas. So what I try to do is create a 3-tiered kind of map. And how I'll do that is I'll start from level 1, which is my neighborhood, and I'll figure out how big that that zone is right here. Maybe it's getting from the inner city or the where the major population is. And then so this is going to be the most crucial area for me to be able to get out of and get my family to safely. And then let's say that zone 2 here is a little bit bigger and it kind of overlaps our zone 1. But it's got these couple of hot spots in there too. So this is where, if I choose to put zone 2 here, this is where I choose to put it. If I don't, maybe I put it down here or something. But for this video, we're going to put it right here. And then we're going to take a zone 3, which is going to overlap this one as well, but it's going to include our bug out location. So we've got these 3 levels of escape plans that we can choose from. And basically what we want to do is try to figure out how we're going to get from point A to, point B and avoid these little hot spots right here. We don't want to go through those. So what you want to do is figure out your plan. You want to get everybody safely together. If you've got some family members that are living over here and a couple that are living over here and maybe a couple over here, maybe some way over here in a different state. We'll go into that later. But you want to be able to get these people together before you go to your bug out location. So picking a place that all of these people can get together is going to be crucial. Now, you probably don't want to have everybody getting together in the middle of a city or going into the turmoil. So maybe what you want to do is pick a location, maybe somewhere over here where this person can go over here and meet up in that point, and this person can go over here and meet up, and this person might have a little bit of a tough time going through this little chaos, but maybe they could skirt this down here and have this rally point where everybody is going to meet up. And this is a place that, it might take you a little bit longer to get there, but everybody can meet there and then head out to the bug out location. Now, ideally, you'd want this to be somewhere that's centralized and maybe a little bit closer or a little bit further away from your bug out location. But the main thing is to make sure everybody has a plan and make sure everybody knows that this is where we're going to meet. We're not going any further until we meet right here. So, think of this as like a fire coming towards all these little hot spots. This is like a fire coming towards you. You've got to get out and you've got to figure out a place where your whole family can meet and meet safely. If you've got a couple people that live down here in this area that are, family members that are right next to you, maybe you want those guys to meet up with you at a rally point here, and then you guys travel to this rally point up here. It's really just it's hard to kind of diagram a plan that works for everybody because it just doesn't. It depends on your situation. It depends on your neighborhood. It depends on the demographics and the crime rate and all of the different stuff that goes into it. So, think about how you can get out of the area you're in. Maybe you use rivers or bike trails or anything like that to get out of there safely, and find a spot that if anybody is coming with you, you've got family and stuff, that everybody can meet up and have these communication tools and everybody knows what's going on, because you don't want to be waiting here for, say a couple hours and then decide to take off, and then all of a sudden, cousin Joe comes over and nobody's there and he doesn't know how to get to the location. So all of these things really need to be planned out and taken care of in advance. And it's going to be harder to get some people on board with this, but at the very least you can tell them, hey, you know what, meet me at this location. If anything ever happens, just pacify me. Meet me at this location. And then have shorthand radio, the police scanners, even walkie-talkies if you're in a close group. Stuff like that will work to communicate between a couple different cars or anything like that. You're not going to have the cell phones to text each other back and forth, so you're going to need some way of communicating with everybody and making sure that everybody gets from point A right here to point B right here. And that's the main goal. And then once you get to point B, everything's set up and everything's good to go. And these zones should be set up, the way I set them up is by danger zones, so to speak. So one is the hotspot. This is the major zone that I'm trying to get out of. This is the target that I'm trying to leave. And then zone 2 is a little bit a little bit less likely for anything to happen. This zone is I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable, but don't ever feel too comfortable. And then finally, by the time you get here, you should feel pretty comfortable that your spot is safe and everything is good to go, because this is your bug out location. And if you can't survive there, the chances of you surviving are going to be pretty rough. So, but with that, let's go ahead and get into the video. I hope this kind of made a little bit of sense, but basically just find these 3 tiers, find a meeting spot, and make sure you have a plan and a few different routes and everybody to get to these same spots safely. All right, so now let's go through some things that you would need to think about, say, if you live in an urban setting and not necessarily downtown like this picture shows, but maybe right on the outskirts of downtown or anywhere that's really populated. And the thing about this situation is this is where you could find yourself in the eye of the storm, because this is where a lot of the population is, a lot of the businesses are, and where, the more population, the more food is going to be needed and all of that. So this is where people could be just flipping out. And you could live in an apartment type setting. You could live in a small home that's right next to somebody else. So just keep in mind that in this situation, you could be in the eye of the storm. And then you also have to think about, do you have a place to go? You can't just kind of up and leave and then expect to be walking the streets or walk out of the city and have a place to camp. You've got to kind of know the different areas. And if you're going to stay in the city, where are you going to stay in the city that gives you the seclusion that you need, the hiding spots that you need? You've got to understand your situation. Or do you have places, do you have family and friends that live outside of the city that maybe you could stay at for a little bit and figure out your plan and all of that? So having a place to go is going to be crucial too. Just being able to leave. I mean, you might be forced to leave, but you really need to have a place to go, because otherwise you're going to be at the will of Mother Nature, and depending on the time of year, if it's snowing or the rainy season or anything like that, you don't want to be stuck outside without the right supplies and all of that. So you've got to keep that in mind. Where am I going to go? And then always keep a clear head, because people in situations like this are going to panic. And I talked about this earlier about the mob mentality, but they're going to be freaking out, and people just kind of run scattered and just all over the place and just don't know what they're doing, and they think spur of the second, and they don't think things through. And we've got to be this person that kind of thinks these things through and keeps a level head and thinks, okay, this stuff is going on over here. I need to get over here, and I need to relax a little bit, or I'm going to end up right smack dab in the middle of all this stuff. So keep a clear head as you are thinking about these things. If this stuff does come to pass and you find yourself in the middle of a situation or very close to a situation like this, you've got to have a level head to be able to survive that. And then you want to look the part, especially in an urban area. You don't want to have, be wearing your camo and you have your tactical backpack and be walking down the street or something and somebody see you and say, who is this dude? This dude has got to have stuff. This guy looks like some kind of survivor. I'm going to go take what he has. Maybe you could have a tactical backpack, but make sure it's just black. It's not camo or anything. Make sure you look the part. You're wearing jeans and a sweatshirt or something like that. Not everything that just freshly pressed out of the dryer and nice and clean, and maybe take some old clothes and put those on and just look ratty, just look like you are having a hard time too. And this is that being the gray man. You don't want to look like a target. You want to make yourself look just like everybody else that's flipping out, so they kind of focus their attention elsewhere. And then the tools that you're going to have in an urban situation are going to be a lot different than somebody that already lives close to in a rural area or something like that. You might need a crowbar or even a lockpick set, something like that in an urban area. And I'm not saying a lockpick set to go break into people's houses and stuff, but if there is some kind of abandoned building that you need to get into, having those lockpicking skills to get in there and then lock the door behind you without busting the lock, that might be something that you need to do. And there's a lot of abandoned areas in different towns and all of that. So finding these places is I don't want to say it's not all that hard, but they can be found. The only problem with that is you've got to be aware of other people that are going to find these places too. So the abandoned buildings and all of that stuff. So having different tools and knowing what kind of tools you're going to need. Maybe you're going to need a hammer or something like that. You're not going to need a fishing kit if you're right in the middle of the city, unless you plan on bugging all the way out, or if you have a lake or something around there. But think about what your situation is and what supplies that situation requires. And always, always, always have situational awareness. And this is knowing your surroundings. Like I said earlier, police scanners or anything like that. Knowing your situation, knowing what's going to give you the best chance for survival. And paying attention to all of these different situations. What's going on around you? How are these people acting? Which way is this? Is this chaos coming? Is it coming towards me? Is it going away from me? What gives me the best chance to survive? So in an urban setting, it's going to be a lot different. Now, we'll go into some suburban stuff right here. Because this is going to be a little bit different too. People in suburban areas, for some reason or another, I don't know why, but they are more friendly with neighbors and stuff. And I think that's maybe because it's not jam-packed like in the city and nobody wants to talk to anybody. And out in the rural area, everybody's so far apart that it's kind of hard to talk to everybody. But your situation here in a rural area is going to be a little more different because you have some more time, but you need to use this time wisely because something could blow up in the matter of seconds. If something's happening in the city and you're kind of far out and everything's kind of going on and you're able to watch this situation unfold, you might be able to formulate a plan and get your stuff together as that's going on. Now, if you live in this little suburb and you're right next to a Walmart, you might not have that time, but it just depends on your situation. But use your time wisely and don't become complacent, because the last thing you want to do is kind of cross your fingers and say, oh, it looks like it's moving to the east and I'm in the west, so I'm good. Because just like a wildfire, I keep using this analogy, but just like a wildfire, those winds could shift and it could be coming right at you before you know it. So if you're not ready, you could be the next one on the list, so to speak. And know thy neighbor, and this is a good and a bad thing, and you want to know who you're dealing with in a situation like this. You want to get to know, and I'm not saying, go over and have lunch once or twice a week, but know who they are, know what they're about, pay attention to, what they have in their garage. And I'm not saying go in and get your binoculars and start spying on them or anything, but, know what they have. Do they have motorcycles? Do they have fishing poles? Do they have this stuff that you would see as, hey, maybe this guy might be an asset to me if all of this stuff goes down? Are they gun owners? Do they, or anything like that? Do they have a pair of golf clubs and that's it, and they're Mercedes? What are these people going to be like? And what kind of an asset or otherwise are they going to be to you in a situation like this? And then always with your community and your family, always have planning and communication. And I talked about this in the video, but it's really important to get your family together and know what's going on and have everybody be on top of everything. And there's a bunch of different ways for communication, but we're going to have to think about not having a grid. So how are we going to communicate with, say I have my son that's in school right now, how am I going to communicate with him if something happens overnight and he's not fully aware of it? How am I going to get a hold of him? Am I going to have to drive all the way down there and grab him? That might have to be what I have to do. But think about all of that stuff, your communication. What's your family going to do in a situation like this? Do they know what they're supposed to do? And then know your escape routes. And this will be a little bit easier in a suburban setting, I think, because the roads are a little less traveled. There's a little less population. All it takes is one person downtown to cause just mass chaos and all of that stuff. One person gets into an accident, or there's a mob in the middle of the street. Everything's backed up for miles. In suburban setting, you can kind of get around. There's different ways to get around things. So know your neighborhood, know the different routes to get out, know where you're going and all of that stuff. And then the tools for survival in this situation are going to be a little bit different too, because you might need that fishing kit. You might need that camping gear, and you're not going to look like this weirdo so much if you do have that, that big backpack or maybe some camo, depending on your neighbors. My neighbors out here, I live in a rural area, it wouldn't give me a second thought if I wore camo, but in that setting, you never know. But look the part, and then figure out what tools you're going to need. You're not going to be moving into the city, hopefully, so those tools you won't need, but you're going to be most likely moving out into a wilderness type situation, or maybe even, the same thing, abandoned house out here, or an abandoned property that you need to have those lock picking skills. You really just need to figure out what your skill set is, what your plan is, and then kind of mold your tools and everything around that plan. And then, like I said before, situational awareness is huge, because you've got to know things can change in the blink of an eye, and you've got to know exactly what's happening. You've got to know if your next door neighbor, who is not quite on your side, if he's planning on something, if he's out of water and he's kind of being sneaky about something, and he plans on coming and getting your water, and he's going to try to do it without hurting you first, but whatever happens is going to happen, and he needs to get his water. So having that awareness is going to be crucial, and always being on your toes with everything. And your operational security in this situation is huge too, because you do want to get to know your neighbors, and you do want to kind of form these alliances. You don't want to let them know what you're up to and what you're planning and everything that you've done, because then you are the target in that little neighborhood. If your neighbor knows, then pretty soon the neighbor of him is going to know, and then pretty soon there's going to be a mob coming to your front door saying, hey, we know you have all of this stuff, so now you need to help us out, because we're neighbors, buddy. We need to help each other out. So you've got to kind of weigh your options here and get to know your neighbors without letting them know what you're doing. Have casual conversations about politics and see where they stand. But I think in a SHTF situation, charity is going to be taken advantage of. And I personally think, everybody has their different views on this, but I personally think it's a big no-no, because it's like feeding a stray cat. Once you feed that cat, they're going to come back for more. So let's go into a rural setting right here. And this one's, a little bit simpler, because basically you're already bugged out. You are out of the city. You're out in the middle of, well, maybe not in the middle of nowhere, but you're pretty much out there. So the population is really low. You've got the resources depending on how much land you have and all of that. This is the situation I'm in, but I still think about bugging out, because I just never know. We're pretty far away from the city, but I'm not so sure that we're far enough. And if anything came this direction, for the life of me, I don't know why it would, but it could, and that's the main thing. If anything came this direction, there might be a situation that causes me to have to bug out. And if I did have to bug out, I do have, or if you live in a rural area, you should have some of these skills to live off the land anyway, because, I see some of my neighbors out here that don't do the gardening or anything like that, or don't even have horses or animals. And I'm like, well, why would you move out here in the middle of nowhere, get 10 acres of land, and not do anything with it? So you should have these skills. If you have the means to grow a garden, and this could be a suburban setting too, if you have that means, learn those skills now. It doesn't mean you have to grow food to sustain your family now, but learn those skills and cultivate that yard and learn all of this stuff. That way, when it does come to pass that you do need these skills, that you've got them. And then if you do bug out, and this is what I've thought about, if I bug out, I'm basically going to be in the middle of nowhere. And actually, this is why we purchased some land, but it's basically a piece of dirt right now. So, and I've got my 5-year plan, and if hopefully nothing happens in the next 5 years, but basically it will be in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing there. I'm basically going to have to build from the ground up. And if you are bugging out and don't have any property, you are, like I said, going to be in the middle of nowhere. You're going to have to pitch your tent. You're going to have to build shelter. You're going to have to figure all of this stuff out. So even if you don't own the property, having a place picked out that you think is secluded enough, that is not part of somebody else's property, that has the resources you need, kind of figure that stuff out now. Even if you have no plans on bugging out, you just never know what's going to happen. And then what time frame are you looking at? And by this, I mean, are you looking at, if you need to bug out, are you looking at just getting lost, getting away from everything for a few days or a few weeks until they kind of come ransack your stuff, and then they move on to the next place, and then you're going to go back to your home and see what's left and try to rebuild that? Or are you looking at, long term, like, hey, this is where we're going to stay now because I don't even want to go back to that. Somebody's probably taken it over and made it their own home, and that's just going to be another disaster. We're going to start our life here. So those things you're going to have to think about as well, as far as, where I'm going, what I'm going to do, and how much I need to build this stuff. And then how long can you actually sustain yourself? We can bring these supplies with us, and we can, we could probably fit enough supplies to last us, a month or two, if given that we've got a water source or something. We could probably have those, but what are you going to do after that? Are you going to have these skills to plant or hunt or trap or anything like that? So you've got to think about that stuff as well. How are you going to sustain yourself after this stuff is gone? And this is stuff you need to think about while you still have that stuff, while you still have the food to sustain yourself, because you don't want to run out of food and then all of a sudden have to plant food, because it's going to take months for that food to grow. So you've got to figure that stuff out now. So basically, let's go through a recap of everything we just went through in this video. You make sure you get your family together. That's the most important part. This is the reason we do all of this, is because of our family. So getting our family together, getting them all in that location is going to be critical, and making sure they're all safe. And our timing is everything. Something could erupt in the blink of an eye. So we really need to be on top of everything. We need to understand what's going on, and we need to figure out what gives us the best chance for survival. Does that mean get out because we know this stuff is happening, so we want to get out before the madness starts happening? Or does that mean that we kind of hold back and wait until the worst is over, we're in a spot where we can kind of wait it out and then kind of sneak out? You've got to think about those things. And then plan on getting separated, because with all the chaos and all the madness, you've just got to have that plan that just in case something happens and we get separated, we've got to know how we're going to meet back up and how we're going to communicate and all that. And you want to avoid the refugee routes, avoid the highways, avoid the hotspots, avoid the Walmarts and the King Soopers and all of that. Avoid those spots where people are going to be gathered and looking for handouts and all of that. You want to be that gray man. You want to get out of there without anybody knowing what's going on. And to do this, you need those outside communications. You need to understand any way possible that you can get any news about what's going on. You want to be able to have that opportunity. So whether that's ham radio, shortwave radio, CBs, anything like that, if the grid's still on and you've got, there's still some people broadcasting, get that information and know exactly what's going on in your area. And I already went through family communications, but making sure your family knows what's going on, they're on the same page, and you guys have a way somehow of communicating. And you've got to understand the mob mentality, and this kind of goes into avoiding the refugee routes. But understand that these people are nuts. These people are not going to be thinking in their right mind. The person that you went to church with on Sunday could, and something like this, could be a completely different person because they're not thinking right. So you've got to understand what this mentality is and expect the worst out of people. As people, we don't want to. We want to help people, and we like to root for the underdog, so to speak, but we really, in a situation like this, it's us against the world, and we need to understand that other people are thinking that exact same way. And we need to expect the unexpected, because just because we've got this great route planned out doesn't mean that something can't happen on that route. Or because we think we're, the mob is moving to the west and we're to the east, doesn't mean they can't switch at the drop of a hat and then all of a sudden be coming towards us. And be the gray man. Be the guy that you don't want to be the target. So look the part of the mob, the chaoticness, I guess, if that's a word. Look the part. Don't be the guy wearing your three-piece suit and your nice tie, carrying your briefcase and stocking up your suburban or SUV with all these nice little totes of food and everything, because you're a target at that point. So what you want to do is be that gray man at the very least until you get out of there, and then even be the gray man at your bug out location. But that's it for this video. I think the next video we're going to actually go into some of the tools and skills and all of that stuff you need. I think it's skills that we'll go into, and some of the things, and this will go into more of off the grid type stuff. So this is kind of what you're going to need after you get to your bug out location. There'll be some tools that you need to get to your bug out location too, but we're going to talk about what it's going to take when you get there and how you're going to survive. So with that, I appreciate everybody watching this video, and we'll see you in the next video.